This war between systems amid escalating tensions, Trump issues a stark warning to Moscow to end the war in Ukraine or brace for economic havoc. Will Putin back down or push back harder? Well, this and many more will be detailed in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Ako. Let's begin. Today, in a bold and unexpected move, U.S. President Donald Trump warned on Sunday that he would impose secondary tariffs of 25% to 50% on countries buying Russian oil if he perceives Moscow as obstructing his efforts to end the ongoing war in Ukraine. President Trump, visibly frustrated, told NBC News he was pissed off at Russian President Vladimir Putin for undermining the credibility of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. This raises a fundamental question. Is Trump's aggressive stance a calculated pressure tactic to force Russia's cooperation, or could it risk further escalating geopolitical tensions? Well, Trump's strong words mark a significant shift from his previously conciliatory approach towards Russia since taking office in January, which has made Western allies uneasy. Despite his earlier diplomatic efforts, Trump's comments reflect growing frustration over the stalled progress on a ceasefire. He elaborated that any country buying oil from Russia would face restrictions on doing business in the United States, with a hefty 25% to 50% tariff imposed. Let's take a look at this video.
They will be kinder than those countries were to the United States of America over the decades. They ripped us off like no country's ever been ripped off in history. And we're going to be much nicer than they were to us. But it's substantial money for the country, nevertheless. I think he's going to be good. Certainly wouldn't want to put secondary tariffs on Russia, but if they were put on, it would not be very good for them. You know, we put secondary tariffs on, as you know, in Venezuela, and it's had a very strong impact on Venezuela. You know that every ship just got out and they left. A lot of them left. They dropped the hoses right into the ocean and they left. They didn't want to be there for a minute because they didn't want those tariffs to catch on, or they didn't want me to see them there. So the Venezuela secondary tariffs, all secondary tariffs are very strong, because essentially it says if you disobey our orders, you cannot do business in the United States of America, and that's the cash cow.
President Trump right there. His threat, if enacted, could significantly impact major oil-buying nations such as China and India, which are key purchasers of Russian crude. Notably, India recently surpassed China as the largest buyer of Russian seaborne crude, accounting for 35% of its total crude imports in 2024. The move could force these nations to reconsider their energy strategies and possibly strain their economic ties with the U.S. However, analysts question whether this strategy is visible or sustainable. How would U.S. officials effectively trace or purchase from Russia, and could such a move backfire by isolating U.S. trade partners? While Trump's threats are stern, he also hinted at progress, telling reporters he remained optimistic about step-by-step improvement despite his disappointment with Putin. Trump indicated he could implement the trade measures within a month. Though no official reaction from Moscow has surfaced, Russia has previously dismissed Western sanctions as economically motivated, labeling them illegal. Meanwhile, the potential new tariffs would follow earlier trade measures targeting countries that continue buying oil from sanctioned nations like Venezuela. Trump's recent tariff on U.S. imports from countries buying Venezuelan oil indicates that his administration may extend similar actions to Russian oil buyers. However, it's been argued that the chaotic manner in which these tariffs are announced leaves room for confusion and potential loopholes. William Rins-Kirk, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, noted that tracing the origin of oil purchased indirectly from Russia could be highly complex, posing a critical implementation challenge. Meanwhile, Trump's approach has also drawn scrutiny within the U.S. as he faces increasing pressure to balance diplomatic negotiations with economic considerations. He remains determined to end what he calls a ridiculous war that began when Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Yet, his public criticism of Zelensky has raised eyebrows. While Trump has previously called for new elections in Ukraine and labeled Zelensky a dictator, his attempt to push Kyiv into a critical minerals agreement has faced resistance, with Zelensky insisting on a thorough legal review. As Trump prepares to speak with Putin this week, it remains uncertain whether these public threats will yield diplomatic concessions or further harden Russian stance in the ongoing war. Given the complexity of international oil marketers and the potential backlash from affected countries, are Trump's proposed tariffs a genuine leverage tool to secure peace, or could they risk economic retaliation and deeper global divisions? A necessary question right there. However, the goal is to ensure this disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine comes to an end. Well, still on President Donald Trump, he has hinted in a new development at the possibility of running for a third term, stating in an interview with NBC News that he enjoys working and he's not joking about pursuing the Oval Office once more. His statement has sparked widespread debate, raising a critical question if his suggestion merely rhetoric to rally his base, or does it indicate a more strategic political maneuver to challenge constitutional boundaries? Speaking to reporters in a phone interview on Sunday, while emphasizing his current focus on his ongoing term, Trump remained firm, saying he was not joking about the potential of a third run, and it is not too far to think about it, he added. Let's take a look at this video.
I don't want to talk about a third term now because no matter how you look at it, we got a long time to go. We have a long time. You know, we have almost 4 years to go. And that's a long time. But despite that, so many people are saying, you've got to run again. They love the job we do. Most importantly, they love the job we do. I haven't heard the term in years. Now I don't know anything about it. This country is going to be more successful than it ever was. It's going to boom. We're going to have boom down USA. We're going to boom. And many industries. And we're going to bring manufacturing, and we're going to bring product. For instance, we need pharmaceuticals in a company. We don't want to be buying our pharmaceuticals from other countries, because if we're in a war, we're in a problem. We want to be able to make our own. We have our own lumber. We have our own energy. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need lumber from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada, as an example. So we are I think we're going to have, I call it the golden age of America. I believe this will be the golden age of America.
Right there, it's going to be a long time coming. Well, constitutionally, the 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1951, clearly limits president to 2 terms. These amendments came after Franklin D. Roosevelt's unprecedented 4-term presidency, which was shaped by the Great Depression and World War II. After Franklin D. Roosevelt's death during his 4th term, Vice President Harry Truman took office, and the amendment was enacted to prevent future multi-term presidency. Despite the constitutional limitation, Trump floated possible methods to bypass this restriction. He suggested that Vice President J.D. Vance could run for president, win, and then hand over power to him, though he vaguely added, but there are others too. Without giving further details, this raises a critical legal and ethical question. Would any attempt to extend Trump's presidency face immediate judicial challenges, or could it trigger a deeper constitutional crisis? Think about that. Well, Trump's remarks have reignited a long-standing debate among his supporters and critics. Earlier this year, Rep. Andy Ogles, a strong Trump ally, introduced a resolution to allow presidents to serve 3 terms, provided that no more than 2 consecutive 4-year stints are served. According to the proposed amendment, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than 3 times, nor be elected to any additional term after being elected to 2 consecutive terms. Well, he told Fox Digital that Trump's leadership is essential to restoring America and extending his tenure is crucial. He argued that Trump has proven himself to be the only figure in modern history capable of reversing our nation's decay. However, critics argue that such a move would undermine democratic principles and set a dangerous precedent. Well, President Trump, known for hinting at extended leadership in the past, previously asked Republican lawmakers whether he could run again, fueling speculation about his long-term political strategy. Given this development, it is safe to say President Trump is the man for the U.S. Since taking office, the American political landscape has skyrocketed. It could be a good one for Trump to have a 3rd term, but then he's just into a 2nd term. Let's hope the coming year sets better precedents. Well, moving over to France Le Pen. In a landmarking ruling, a French court found far-right leader Marine Le Pen guilty on Monday of misappropriating EU funds. The sentencing, expected shortly, could see her barred from the 2027 presidential race, a move that may drastically reshape French politics. As the head of the far-right National Rally and a front-runner in opinion polls, could this conviction signal a significant shift in France's political landscape? Well, prosecutors have called for an immediate 5-year ban from public office, regardless of any appeal process invoking the provisional execution measure. This controversial step, if adopted, would effectively prevent Le Pen from running for president in 2027, even if she disputes the verdict. Well, the judges, however, have the discretion to adopt, modify, or disregard the prosecution's recommendation. Here's the political consequences she may face. An automatic 5-year ban would deal a significant blow to Le Pen, who is 56 years, who has already made 3 bids for the presidency and has declared that 2027 would be her final attempt. Despite the guilty verdict, she would retain her parliamentary seat until the end of her current mandate. However, the decision has stirred strong reactions among her supporters and opponents alike, with many questioning the fairness of the trial. Judge Benedict Day, issuing the verdict, stated that Le Pen had been central to a system designed to misuse EU funds for the benefit of her party. At the heart of this system since 2009, Marine Le Pen has placed herself with authority and determination, the judge remarked, adding that the practice originated from her father's leadership and continued under her guidance. The court also found 8 other former EU lawmakers and 12 parliamentary assistants guilty of similar charges. The defendants argued that the funds were used appropriately and criticized the prosecution's narrow interpretation of a parliamentary issue. Meanwhile, Le Pen has been vocal about her belief that the charges are politically motivated, accusing prosecutors of trying to ensure her political death. Drawing parallels to U.S. President Donald Trump's assertion about his legal battles, she claims that the establishment is attempting to block the national rally from power. But does this defense resonate with the French public, or is it merely an attempt to shift the narrative amid legal challenges? Judge Departios dismissed claims that the misuse of funds was a mere administrative error, emphasizing that the evidence pointed to deliberate embezzlement aimed at reducing party expenses. Well, as Lipin listened to the verdict, she could be seen subtly shaking her head, silently disagreeing with the court's conclusion. Well, while arriving at court, Lipin maintains that the party used the money within legal limit. However, supporters argue that the charges are politically driven, while critics say the verdict underscores a pattern of financial misconduct. The looming question remains: will this conviction solidify Lipin's narrative of political victimization, or will it erode her support among voters ahead of the 2027 elections? In bringing you to the climax of this report, this could be a draining and daring one for Le Pen, considering her political career. This is well happening at the crux of it. Nonetheless, this could be another good reason why leaders need to be held accountable. As Le Pen faces her biggest challenges yet, will the court's verdict mark the end of Le Pen's political rise, or is there even a comeback on the horizon? Well, until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's edition of Flash News. Remember, we're bringing you recent happenings from the home front at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe.